Our diversity indeed is a gift from the Most High. He says also what is translated as, O humanity, behold, we have made you from a pair, a male and a female, and we made you into different nations and tribes, not so that you hate each other, but so that you learn from each other. Verily, the most righteous amongst you are those that are most pious, the most sincere in service, the most committed to uplifting those in need, the most committed to reflecting God's mercy through sincere service to others. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself taught that God does not look at your outward forms, nor does he look at your wealth. And what is used to separate us in the political discourse, in the media, in the conversations we have with each other, what is used to grow arrogance in the heart by which we look down upon each other, by which we are willing to allow others to suffer a fate we would never allow for our own children. It is often our outward forms and our wealth that gives us an arrogance by which we look down upon each other, by which we turn our backs upon each other, by which we celebrate the tears of children, of those who go to different houses of worship, or those who speak different languages, or those who have a different heritage. But here the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, makes clear. He says God doesn't look at your outward forms, nor your wealth, nor your claims, quite frankly. He doesn't look at your labels. It is not righteousness to turn to the east or the west, to pray in a mosque or a church. What is righteousness is to believe in God in the last day and to help the poor and the needy and the oppressed. That is what true righteousness is. So he said God doesn't look at your outward forms, but he looks at your hearts and your actions. We want to say it's all about the heart, the faith. Yes, faith is important, but is faith true if it is not translated into righteous actions to help those in need, to help those that are suffering, to uplift humanity from darkness to light, to wipe away the tears of children that are crying, either because of poverty or war or unjust policies that we fund with our own tax dollars? As this young woman so eloquently put, this young woman that gives me hope for the future of this nation. Thank you, and God bless you, my sister. Before his death, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gathered all 100,000 of his followers, and he gave a beautiful, powerful last sermon. And in that sermon, he said a powerful message for which the likes of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X laid down their lives for. He said, an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab. Nor does a white person have any superiority over a black person, nor a black person any superiority over a white person. The only thing that separates you in the sight of God is your piety, your service to others, your faith that's translated into sincere actions as you strive to fulfill the purpose for which you were created. We were created as the representatives of God on earth. What is the role of the representative of the Creator? It is to do the work the Creator wants done in each and every circumstance, so that when people are hungry, the representative of God feeds them. When people are thirsty, the representative of God gives them drink. When people are oppressed, the representative of God aids them. When children are crying, the representative of God comforts them and fights the policies that led to their tears, whether it is unjust drone strikes overseas or separation of migrants domestically. Don't be that person that is bankrupt in the sight of God. Who is such a bankrupt person? The Prophet Muhammad asked his companions, do you know who the bankrupt one is? They said, yes, the bankrupt person is the one who lost all his wealth. He said, no. The bankrupt person is the one who worshiped God abundantly, prayed abundantly, attended the house of worship abundantly, and yet he injured his brother and sister in humanity. He cheated his brother and sister in humanity. He gossiped against his brother and sister in humanity. He stood by as his brothers and sisters suffered and did nothing. On the day of judgment, God will take all the worship he did and gift them as blessings to compensate the injustice he did to those he hurt. Don't be the bankrupt person. In another tradition, it is related by the Prophet Muhammad that a man will approach God on the day of judgment. And what a beautiful meaning that is. One of the scholars said, on the day of judgment, I look forward to the day God says, my servant so-and-so, my servant Hassan. And he said, I don't care what he says to me after that. He said, if you were to throw me in hellfire, I would tell the people of hell how much I love you, O most merciful one. Let us be driven by God's love to serve this creation. In this tradition, it is said that a man approaches God on the day of judgment for judgment, and God tells the person, I was sick and you didn't help me. He said, Lord, how can you be sick when you're the creator of the heavens and the earth? He said, my servant was sick. Had you visited him, you would have found me there. I was hungry and you did not feed me. Lord, how could you be hungry when you are the creator? My servant was hungry. Had you fed him, you would have found me there. I was thirsty, you gave me no water. Had you fed my servant, you would have found me there. What will God ask us? Will he not ask us about the victims of institutional racism that continue to suffer in this land? Will he not ask us about the children that are taken away from their parents? Will he not ask us about those that are hungry while we sleep with our bellies full? And what are we doing to bring about that change? See, it is phenomenal. If we could agree on the spiritual questions of life, that would be great. But even if we can't we agree to work together for the goals of our faiths? Do not all of our faiths call us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves? In fact, that is the basic requirement to be a believer, according to the Prophet Muhammad. He said, none of you are believers. He didn't say none of you are the best believers. He said, none of you are even believers unless you love for others what you love for yourselves. That is the minimum requirement for faith. When we speak about each other and we disagree politically, do we love for others what we love for ourselves? When we see children suffering at the border, do we love for them what we love for our own children? When we see people doing injustice, do we love for them what we love for ourselves? If we were to do injustice, would we not want to be guided and corrected with love and with compassion? There's another tradition. I believe if we were to combine these two traditions and how we interact with each other, humanity would be much better off in 2020. And that is, those who are people of mercy will be shown mercy by the most merciful ones. Show mercy to those in earth, and the one in heaven will show mercy to you. So let us be driven by mercy, by loving for others what we love for ourselves. And when we do that, we will find that we don't have too many disagreements. We will find that we work together to be a source of compassion and mercy for humanity. We must recognize, as I mentioned, that when you engage in racism, you're offending the Creator before the creation. And likewise, when you fight racism, you are fighting for the Creator. And that's why it isn't enough to be not to be racist. If you yourself are not racist, you haven't fulfilled your mission, because that's the message behind Martin Luther King's message. We will not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. If you're truly anti-racist, what are you doing to fight racism day in and day out? See, today, my brothers and sisters, it's not only a reminder of the beauty of our diversity, but it's also a reminder that sacrifice is a necessary price to pay to protect our ability to celebrate diversity. Our ability to sacrifice opens the door for us to have God's love. That's what sets us apart from the angels. Our ability to sacrifice, that ability is found within our imperfections and within our weakness. And that's why our imperfections and our weakness opens doors to God's love as we sacrifice to overcome them. See, in the Islamic tradition, we believe God had perfect beings, those were angels. But because they were perfect, because they were not racist, because they felt no hunger, had no needs, they couldn't sacrifice neither to overcome their own desires nor to help other angels, because there were no angels in the Islamic tradition, as we believe, that needed help. But as human beings, as we are tested with the freedom to be racist, to oppress, to hurt, to be greedy, because that also means we have the opportunity to sacrifice for God by fighting racism, by fighting poverty, by fighting injustice. We have the ability to sacrifice, and when you sacrifice, that's how you achieve love. That's how you achieve love of your Creator. One cannot be beloved to the Creator without service to His creation and proving that that love is real through sacrifice. And that's what we saw in the life of Martin Luther King. It's his sacrifice that changed this country for the better. And only when we are willing to sacrifice can we do what it takes to create the change that is needed to make the world a better place. We must recognize that if it wasn't for the sacrifice of people like Martin Luther King, America would indeed today be one of the worst places in the world to live in. There are people I see in this room, perhaps they would not be able to eat at the same diner table or drink from the same fountain as my parents or grandparents. And who changed that? People like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, countless others of different races and religions who literally in Selma and many other places shed not just their sweat as we shed today, but they shed their very own blood. They paid with it, with their very lives. And it's because of their sacrifice yesterday that we can have this beautiful gathering today. What sacrifice are we making today to ensure our children can have such beautiful gatherings tomorrow? The message of Martin Luther King is needed now more than ever as politicians are trying to pit one America against the other, one human being against another, and often they do it on account of race or religion. They do it promising poverty. These people will take our jobs. They will hurt our economy. We know in the Quran it says the devil promises you poverty. So if you're a politician, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, but if you're trying to make people scared because of poverty, or you call an entire group of people rapists, I'm sorry. But you're doing the devil's work, and I fear none but God, and that's why I say it here on the pulpit. We cannot let the devil tear us apart. We should never forget that God is the creator, so you can't look down upon his creation because of their differences. We should never forget that God is the provider, so we can never let fear, economic fears, tear us apart. And that's historically what dictators and rulers used to tear people apart, economic fears. We have to rise above that. Every time has its Pharaoh, and every time has its Moses. Every time has its MLK. But the truth of the matter is, if we don't learn from the troubling past of our country, we're doomed to repeat it. Yes, America's a great nation today. It's a great nation because of the people who spoke truth to power and called for equality amongst humanity, but they were not championed. There are many people today who speak highly of Martin Luther King, but who would have been against him in his time. In fact, before his life was taken for the great mission that he carried, he only had a 23% approval rating amongst white Americans, 45% approval rating amongst black Americans. Now everybody considers him a hero, but not everybody did back then. And maybe many people that consider him a hero today only do so because he is dead and cannot call out their abuse and cannot call out their injustice. So ask yourself truly, if MLK was alive today, where would you stand? And are we with him? And what are we doing to continue his message? My brothers and sisters, as my dear sister said in her opening remarks and quoting, that the same hate is targeting us all, and it breaks my heart. You know, it was not long ago in one weekend I read that one church had a violent gun attack, one synagogue had a violent knife attack, and one mosque had a violent attack as well. The same hate that targets Jews or Muslims targets Christians. The same hate that targets black Americans targets Hispanic Americans. We must stand united. An attack on one of us is indeed an attack on all of us. So let us work together, my beloved brothers and sisters, To build a place where children of all people, regardless of their race or religion, can grow up proud of who they are, without fear of intimidation or harassment. Let us remember that people are not our enemies, ignorance is our enemies. Ignorance leads to misunderstanding, which leads to fear, which leads to hate, which ultimately leads to acts of discrimination and violence that undermine the very principles of liberty, which alone can make this nation great. Hate can destroy the very foundations of liberty and justice that sets our nation apart. And this country continues to struggle because of its dark history. A history of Jim Crow laws, a history of slavery, a history of war. And it is up to us to be the representatives of God, to work to change such injustices, to bring people that mercy and that compassion and that love that they all need. My brothers and sisters, as I finish, I want to say, again, a special thanks to our young sister with their powerful words. But next year, I hope to see many of our classmates and our colleagues here. We need to see your children and your grandchildren here to continue the torch, my brothers and sisters. They are the future for this country. We must be guided by mercy. This country needs mercy. It's only when we lack mercy can we see many of the conflicts that we see played out on media and TV. Remember, none of you are believers until you love for others what you love for yourself. Let us be united in remembering that our God is one and we are all his creation. And let us seek closeness to our Creator through sincere service to his creation. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America, and God bless this world. Peace be with you.